I grew up on it. I was a little boy on a farm. There was a farmhouse my dad was renting. Big farm around. Yeah. Used to play in the barn in the silo.
Okay, anyway, Ted, it doesn't look like I'm... So those tubs you see on the ground, right, Donnie, you just got to sort of point the phone and work it. Right, so this here is capable of all the food waste, shredded paper that you would produce, Ted, in your house. So you put in this one here, and underneath it you got a bin, and there's a little tap goes there so you get the juice out. The juice is the bit that's a really good bit. So you'd put a layer of shredded paper type or something like that and a few veggie scraps there, and you put your worms in. Then you put this one on top, right? And you got a lid for it to keep the flies out. And then, like you got, all your waste from food waste, anything organic, you just put it in. And when that one becomes to its full mark, then you just add that one on top and you start filling it.
Oh, wow.
And when it's done and the worms will come back up into it, then you can take that one out and empty the bottom one, empty the castings out, right? And you can use them on your plants, on your lawn.
So you're saying that if you just leave that stuff in the bucket, it'll turn to what looks like dirt?
Yeah, the worms will do that. So now we'll come down here because I do a bigger setup because I've got more land, got more waste.
Yeah.
And I'll show you this setup.
It's nice.
Right?
Yeah, that's beautiful. Man.
So I got this idea I got this idea to use these tubs off of Greg Allison, who does Green Greg's. Right? So if you can shine that on there, Donna. So these are, you'll see, they're what's called an IBC. So I use the bottom of them because that's got an opening and that's worm juice in there. Right? So I use the bottom of them for me worms. And where I've cut the top off, I use the top for water troughs for other animals. Now showing the worms. There you go. So you might see a few worms on that one. Now it's winter here, so they're not as active. All right. And we're going to start using this soon. So that there, Greg, is all a combination of dead animals, rotten hay. So if a chook dies, that's where it goes, in one of these. Right? So it's a combination of compost, of old rotten hay, and that's what it turns into.
Probably run into my love life there.
I can't see. So that's what it turns into. And the juice on it, well, you mix it, a lot of them different. They all have different things, but if you're mixing it around a third of the juice to a third water and putting it on your pot plants, it doesn't smell, right? So you get no smell with it. And that's one of the good things about it.
Wow.
And I cover them up with old carpet, right? These bins. Get out of the way, Judy.
Hey, Poosh.
Bloody
Steal on the limelight.
Yeah. It's an American schnauzer. That's why it's a bloody sticky nose, hey? This one here is. This one here, that one there. So we're going to use this pretty soon. We've got some trees we're going to plant with it. And then there's not many worms up the top. Oh, I could do that, couldn't I? Yeah, I'll go and get the fork. So some people say, you don't disturb them, but I reckon they like being turned over because it makes them work. But that's just my view.
All right.
All right. So if you have a look there, you'll see. a good number of worms. They're gone down a bit because it's so cold here at the moment. Yeah, so that's the worm business,
What's the
Teddy. And likes of those black things I showed you, get out. You'd buy them at Lowe's or any of those sort of stores you got in the States.
What's the temp
Have them.
Fahrenheit?
It's cold. Be about around 40-ish.
Okay, you're not having frost
45.
yet. No frost yet.
Yeah, we had a frost this morning, minus
Okay.
three, which is way down, which is below 0 Celsius. I can't remember the conversions. So in this one here,
32.
I've got these little tree shoots off this tree that was being cut down where I used to work. So I put these in here to see if they'll shoot and grow a tree. But they're a form of a pine, a Nordic pine.
Mhm.
Apparently there's a lot of them grown in America. You grow a lot there and use them for building materials. So there you go. And that's our little worm day.
Right.
Yeah, Teddy, beautiful day out here today, isn't it? Lovely blue sky.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Was that an old plow you just went past? What is that, a coffin? Right, you
No,
just
that
went-
there,
The old plow?
that
on the left?
there. No, that's a bale stacker.
Yeah.
So you put bales of hay on that and take them
Oh.
up higher,
Yeah, I got it.
so you can stack them up higher. Yeah, but we don't use that anymore, do we, dear? No, too hard to work.
Mm.
We do half-ton bales now.
How can you walk around and have it? Oh, Donna's filming you. And okay. Because you're
Yeah.
coming through really clear. You got a microphone on your
Yes,
ear?
I have.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, look, show him that, Donna. That.
You got your headphones with a microphone?
See?
Yeah, I see. Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah.
No wonder you're
Yeah,
busy.
so anyway, that's that little part done. So we could head on to Teddy's
Okay.
business
Okay.
now.
Then I can.
And of
you know
course,
what?
we store our own water, Ted, straight out of the sky.
Yeah, I'm gonna record this I'm making a video. People are gonna want to know
Yeah,
this.
all right.
This is interesting.
All right, well, we'll stop the recording now and we'll start Teddy.
Okay.
Susceptible to electricity in the ground,
Okay.
and you can't go through the ground for any reason, and they'll pop out like that straight away. They pop up, so they're electrically connected, probably as well.
That's wild. I did not know that.
Mhm.
So worms are
Now they have. Now I can't remember off the top of my head, but they have more than one heart.
Did
You know that? Yep.
No,
When-
I didn't even know they had a heart. Is that right?
Yeah, they have more than one. Yep.
That's interesting.
And they say they
I've-
consume their own body weight per day.
Oh wow, yeah, that's interesting. I mean, you don't hear that every day. I mean, that's not something you see every day. Worms are weird.
And they can be an hermaphrodite or a non-hermaphrodite. So, for instance, if you only have a few and they're not meeting each other to mate, a single worm can produce eggs to create them going. So they can be an hermaphrodite if needed, or they can be a joiner. All right.
Yeah. Now I know that if you cut a worm in half, it's two worms, right?
Sometimes they'll live, yes, and the reason why is because they have more than one heart.
That's right. That's that. They spend their whole life in the dirt.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have any eyes.
Yep. And his worms. So I've been playing around with them, Greg, since around 1990. on and off. You know, like my thing is that you should be partly responsible for your own waste, and it's a waste that you can reuse.
Yeah.
No?
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. So let me ask you this once again, because I was running the video while you were talking and I missed part of that. What are the benefits of having the worm farm?
All right. Right. A large majority of our waste does not go to landfill. Or we are able to convert it to worm castings. Now, say a
To worm
5-gallon
casting?
drum. Yeah, so say a 5-gallon drum of waste that you would have, say, over a period of time of paper, of peelings and that from when you're preparing food and
Wrappers, jugs, plastic bottles.
Yeah, no, plastic bottles I don't like.
Okay.
All right, so you forget them.
Well, I'm glad
So
I
anything
said
that's
that.
organic,
Okay.
anything that's organic, right?
Gotcha.
Anything organic, right?
Gotcha.
So let's say you've got a 5-gallon bucket of organic waste.
Okay.
By the time they're finished munching away on it, you've probably got less than quarter of a gallon of castings.
Wow.
So it takes a lot of organic matter to get a tub like you've seen on that video, right?
Yeah. So they
You
eat
know,
all
they've taken 18 months to build to that level,
So
right?
they
And that
eat
was
it.
using They
poop soil.
and that's what it's very similar to soil.
Yes.
Yes.
It's synthetic, but
Yeah,
it
and
still has nutrients, right?
yeah, and like I say, Greg Allison on his channel is probably one of the best I've come across. He's got a playlist of stuff on worms, like the mitochondria, their life cycles, and everything. And like I said before, I've been playing with them now since about 1990.
How
with
long do they
time,
live?
well, I couldn't tell you exactly how long they live, but if you got
Months? Years?
I reckon they'd live years.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Like a fly. I don't know how long a fly lives. Probably only a week, right? Maybe.
Yeah, they don't live that long.
Yeah, that's right. I always assume most insects don't, but some do. But the worm isn't an insect anyway. What is it classified as?
So when a worm lays eggs, look, I've heard various people, but from their eggs, they can lay up to 48 eggs at a time, and you'll see them in the castings, and they're little goldy colour.
Do they have male and female?
Well, yeah, under normal circumstances, but like I say, if, for instance, there was very few in the bin, they'll turn into hermaphrodites. So at the end of it, if there's no other worm around, it can produce worms to get a whole colony going. So they are very, you give them the right environment, they are very efficient and very good little workers. Yeah.
I'll be damned.
But like I say, that was my thing back in the 80s, you know.
I thought worms existed to put on hooks.
They're good for that too.
I didn't know that they served that kind of a purpose. So they could be, what do you call them? Not a predator, but they're like vultures and stuff. They got a term for them.
Well, yeah, well, they like it. I suppose it's a bit like this.
They clean up waste.
Yeah. So they prevent disease. It's a bit like flies. We all hate flies.
Yeah.
But if we didn't have flies, things that would die naturally in locations where people aren't, it'll just sit there and rot and be susceptible. Where flies get in in a relatively short time, the maggots and that have consumed the majority of it. And that prevents disease more than it creates disease. And worms are the same. They convert that waste, and also they convert that, take it down in the soil, food for your bacteria, mitochondria, and that in your soil. And then, of course, when plants grow, they get to feed off that.
Do they redeposit elements? Trace elements into the soil?
Yeah.
Really?
Now, they did studies in India, right? And the biodynamic people talk about where you can have soil that's classified as toxic with heavy metals, and if you can get enough worms through it, when they test it, they can't find it. Now, whether they transmute it, convert it to something else, or whatever, I couldn't tell you. But I know in India they've used them in India a lot for heavy waste treatment.
So in farming, it's pretty big.
Oh yeah, you have a look on any sites now where they talk especially your organic type, regenerative type farming. One of the big things they talk about is how many earthworms they got in their soil.
Now, the kind of worms we have here in Michigan are night crawlers. What kind of worms do you have?
They're reds. They're reds, red wrigglers, blues, and tigers in them bins. And those night crawlers you got, they're really good for consuming vegetable waste, all that stuff. Yeah.
That's interesting. I had no idea that was the case. I thought worms were just a nuisance. Now, do they have any natural enemies?
Oh, everything loves them.
Okay, so they're the punching bag of the worm.
Birds.
The worm, I would say insect world, but they're not insects. So the worm world.
No, but
you know what I mean.
Birds and that.
Yeah,
birds love them.
Robins. Yep, that's what they like. The early bird catches the worm. Yeah, it's true.
And not only that, with well, you think they're majority protein.
Yeah. No, I remember seeing a Vietnam movie.
For a bird net, that would be like going to steakhouse.
In that Vietnam movie, they were feeding the American prisoners bowls of worms. It was that or nothing.
Yeah.
At first, they're like, but then after a while, they're like, give me them worms. But they're full of protein.
Depending on what they've been eating. So if you had them in, those worms there in those bins there where they had no manure, relatively, it was all composted stuff and that. The inside of them would be pretty clean. And Greg Allison talks about how, and different ones I've heard talk about, the pure castings. You can rub your hands together after it so they're all dirty, and your hands are clean. Right, that's one way.
You put your hands in the bin.
Yeah. So if the castings are done, so they've consumed all the food you've put in there, when you handle them, you'll be able to rub your hands together and your hands will be clean. All right, so and I've seen people, hands don't get dirty when the castings are done.
Do they feed off of carcasses?
Oh, yeah.
Oh. Yeah. Where's their mouth? I don't even see like any orifices from it to it at all. They're just disgusting looking.
I've never really looked.
I guess they might be, if you looked at them under a microscope.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I didn't know that. Yeah, I just learned something new.
They're one of our greatest helpers. What they leave behind produces really good vitamin, mineral-rich food.
It's called compost.
No, that's worm castings. Compost, they will turn into worm castings, and you will tell the difference when you see it. Because the worm castings are just like grains, when they're dried out, they're just like grains of sand, but they're a dark colour. The other thing I've noticed with them over the years is fresh manure they don't like. So fresh manure. So if you get fresh horse dung or cow dung, they don't like that. They don't like that. They
Check
like
out
it
the-
to have dried out. That's a white worm that you probably wouldn't want.
Russian worms frozen for nearly 42,000 years, alive and well.
Yeah.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
crazy. I didn't know. So you don't know how long they could possibly live, for 150 years, maybe longer.
Well, I've never tried it, but there's a chance that you could freeze them, and then when you thaw them out, they'll come back to life.
That's
Put them back
that's
on the ground.
amazing. That's the only miracle animal.
Put them back on the ground. One of the few. Yeah.
Mhm. That's pretty cool.
So,
Didn't know.
no, so like I say, I like them because they do a lot of work for you.
Yeah, yeah.
You get that hard clay ground that's been stripped with mining. You have to put the worms on and the worm casting and the worm juice. And over a period of a couple of years, they will turn that around into usable ground.
Marine worms are eating plastic.
There you go. Yeah.
Hey, did you know that there is an island like the size of Rhode Island or something? I can't remember the place they compare. In the Pacific Ocean, that is nothing but garbage.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard of that. Yeah, that's that island. It's actually not an island, is it? It's actually like it. It's an island of garbage. Yeah, that's right. It's an area where it's just it's sort of where all the
Hey,
water
why doesn't
comes together.
somebody clean it up, for God's sakes? What's the matter with people? It's an island. It's like solidifying. That's just
Out of
ridiculous.
sight, out of mind. Out of sight, out of mind. Isn't it? You know, like when you put your
there it is.
When you put your garbage bin out, Greg, right? Do you think about where it goes?
No, I assume it's going to a landfill.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then, so you bury it. Then what's the process that happens with it? You understand what I mean? Like, all that's put in the landfill, and they build these mountains with it. What happens then?
Well, the next thing you know, people are going to start living on it.
Well, it converts to things like methane. So yes, you can actually build power plants on them, right? Because you get the methane and that off them. But ultimately, a lot of that stuff that we throw into landfill is capable of being reused as fertilizers and all various things.
You know, I heard that the Pacific Ocean is dying.
Yeah, it's quite possible. I think the salt content around where that mountain of waste is in there would be huge.
Just awful. You know, I used to watch this series called Survivor Man. The guy was by himself.
Oh, yeah.
Remote islands, Africa. He's been all over the world, right? And he said no matter where he goes, anywhere on Earth, he always finds some kind of evidence of humans by their garbage.
Yep.
They're vile creatures.
Just imagine in, say, 10,000 years, some archaeologists will be going through those poles soon, trying to work out how we lived.
Yeah, I had this mental picture of, like, you know, in a billion years or a million years, when Venus settles down, there's going to be life there, and they'll come to Earth and they'll see our wasteland, old cities, you know, all over.
Well, they'll find remnants. Yeah, they'll find remnants like we do now in Egypt and Syria and all those places, and in Southern America, the Incas and that. And they'll be trying to work out how we lived and what we did and everything, just like the archaeologists do today.
They'll ask, where are your great uninterested today? Because the most people in the world are uninterested.
So, you know, there's the old saying, Greg, one man's trash is another man's treasure.
Oh, wow. The Great Pacific Garbage Patch. It's twice the size of Texas. I didn't know it was that big. Holy shit. Pretty soon it's going to be the whole ocean. You could just walk across to Australia.
Well, that'd be all right.
Yeah, it would be bad. You have to drive your car here. It'd be long
So you could
way.
build over
It's
time.
only
It could build
8,000
an
miles.
island. Over time, it could build an island, and people could inhabit it. Like I say, Greg, that's why I like playing with the worms you get. They help you grow good food, and they get rid of
Yeah.
all your waste.
Yeah,
No.
that's really something. They say, you learn something new every day. I guess that's true, because I didn't know that about worms at all. No wonder. I was like, what is he making such a big deal about with worms for? I was wondering where your head was at. I didn't know, but I should have known that you know a lot about that kind of stuff.
No, not many people really. Most people don't care two hoots about where their garbage goes or anything like that.
Yeah.
And I just looked at when they started out here, going back 30 years ago, doing different bins and different charges and all that.
Yeah.
I ain't paying them all that money, so I started doing it myself, converting it to worm food.
That's excellent.
And,
that's excellent.
Like you take your bit of lawn out the back, you throw those castings over the lawn, and they go down in there, and then they provide nutrients for that lawn, or even
I get it.
your few little tomatoes. You put some castings around your tomatoes, they grow.
Castings? You mean like a few dozen worms or something?
No, the castings are the soil.
Oh, the soil that's created. Okay, so you got
the soil's called the castings, and then you feed your plants. Like I do about a third. I'm pretty heavy-handed, so I do about a third of the liquid that comes out the bottom, and then the rest water, and put that water that around your plants, and they seem to have a really good growth spurt on it because it's got fairly good nitrogen and that in it.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Andy, for sharing your expertise on worms. I had no idea.
Thank you, Greg, for giving me the opportunity. You're welcome.
All right. Thank you very much, and we'll see you again next time.